So hi everyone, welcome back. This is my guide on how to execute a good Ironman. So today we're talking about transitions, and we're talking about transition one, or T1 as it's known, which is basically from the swim to the bike. So we're going to break this down into three components. Today we're going to talk about some of the things you want to do in training to make a transition easier, and some of the things to think about. The next episode we'll talk about considerations specific to events, and then the final episode we'll talk about going through a transition in bits and pieces. So what is good transition? Well, it's basically in an Ironman, the critical thing is getting from the swim, for example, to the bike, making sure you've got all your gear and your nutrition and all the things that you need to then get you through the bike ride. And when we talk about the bike to run later in the piece, again, that's about just making sure you put all the pieces in place so that you can be smooth and efficient, and have, if you have special nutrition requirements, then you've got them for the run, and obviously your shoes and stuff. So, and whatever strategy you're going to run. So it's about having a plan. And that is consistent with all the stuff that we're talking about. You know what I mean? You need to go in with a plan. You need to be prepared and have practiced what you're going to do so that in the race it's easy. You're trying to make the day as easy as possible and as stress-free as possible, and so you can make it basically process-driven. So let's talk about some of the things you want to, some of the considerations. So there's a couple of the key things you need to think about. We'll talk about three main things, and there's probably lots more, but there's a couple of things that you need to be practicing and consider. So the things you need to be practicing are, one of those is running with your bike. And that's because once you pick up your bike and off the racks and transition, you then need to run to the mountain line. And then that brings us to the next critical thing, is how you're going to mount your bike. And there's a couple of factors that will influence that. And then the other thing that you need to consider as part of a good transition, and that's what you're going to wear. It might sound silly, but what are you going to wear on the bike? But it'll also denote what you might wear in the swim, for example. And the thing with an Ironman is you drop your stuff off the day before. You know what I mean? So when you're dropping your bags off, you need to have contingencies based on where you're racing and what the conditions are going to be like. Like if you're doing a race in Asia where it's hot, in your bag, you might not have very much. You might have some food and your helmet, and that might be it. If you're doing a race in New Zealand or in Europe, and in places where that it can be cool in the morning, you might have an extra couple of layers of clothing in that bag. So it's going to be relative to the race. But also, it's going to denote what you're going to wear underneath your wetsuit. So, for example, a lot of people, tri-suit, for example, sweat, tri-suit, underneath your wetsuit, you come in, you jump on your bike, you get your gear, and you'll get your gear, jump on your bike and go. Easy as that. However, if you're racing, for example, here in New Zealand, in Taupo, it can be cold for the first hour. So, for example, you might want arm warmers. Now, do you want to put your arm warmers on underneath your wetsuit? Yes, admittedly, they'll be wet initially, but it's about having a barrier on the bike, because the reality is trying to put arm warmers on a sopping wet body is quite a challenge. Get out of the pool and try and put arm warmers on and see what I mean. So, one strategy for that is you can have an old pair of arm warmers that are a bit floppy and a bit loose, so that with the plan to discard them later in the race. And usually there's a place where you can discard gear. So there's the things, but also what are you going to wear on the bike? So, for example, some people might feel more comfortable wearing cycle kits. So it might be that they wear their cycle shorts underneath their wetsuit, and then they get in and they put a cycle top on, and then they're away. The advantage of that is that you can have all your pockets loaded, ready to go. Because putting stuff in pockets in a wetsuit when you're swimming, that stuff might work its way out. Or also it actually might chafe you just with the movement and rotation when you're swimming. So they're all considerations, and they're all going to be different for the race, but you need to think about it, and you need to have a plan about, okay, I'm doing this race here, I just need, underneath my wetsuit, I need my tri-suit. When I get into transition, I'm only going to need a pair of socks if you wear socks. Personally, I don't. You might need socks, you might need your food and bits and pieces, and then you can just go through and go away. Or you might go, actually, I'm going to have contingencies for cold weather, and I might have a vest, or I might have a polyprop layer, or I even just might have one of those survival blankets. You can wear that underneath your wetsuit if you want. You can crinkle, put a survival blanket underneath your tri-suit, so that when you get so far into the bike and it warms up, you just unzip it and just pull it out and discard it at an aid station. So there's lots of things to think about, but fundamental is you need to think, what you wear on the bike might dictate what you wear in the swim. So it's something to think about. Like I personally don't wear socks, so I don't have, but having said that, if I was doing, like I've already entered Taupo for next year, which will be 30 years since my first Ironman New Zealand, so which is a bit scary because I'm old now. But I generally don't wear socks on the bike. However, that race is pretty cool in the morning, so the decision for me will be closer to the time. Will I put socks on just to keep my feet a bit warm, or will I wear toe covers and still go bare feet? And I've got neoprene toe covers which just keep the wind chill off. So they're all things to think about in the build up. So we'll talk about more about that possibly as we go through all this. So the other thing is about running with your bike. So one of the things that you want to practice is how you're going to run with your bike. Sounds simple, but the reality is when you take your bike out of the rack and you're running to the mount line where you can get on your bike, rather than running holding both your handlebars, so you're running like that, what you're actually better off doing is actually running holding the seat. Actually, the seat here is a prop for today because I need it in the next bit we're going to talk about. But rather than holding your handlebars, it's much easier to hold your seat, and then you just lean the bike to the right and the bike will go to the right, and you lean the bike to the left and the bike will go to the left. So one of the things you want to do is you want to practice that out on a paddock and just run around the paddock holding your bike and just get used to running. And you'll find you'll either be on the right hand side of the bike or on the left hand side of the bike, whatever's more comfortable for you. The reason that we do it that way is pandemonium is the nature of the beast in transition. And if you're running along holding the handlebars, there's a couple things that might happen. For example, first up, you run the risk of, if you've got your shoes on the bike, you run the risk of tangling your legs up in that. But you're also less maneuverable in it, and it's not as fast. Especially if somebody steps in front of you and one of the racks steps out without looking and you bowl into them. You're going to be tangled up in your bike, their bike, and all the mess. However, if you're running along holding the saddle, for example, it's a lot faster. You're less likely to get tangled up in your pedals and your shoes if you've got them on. But also, if somebody steps out in front of you, you can actually let the bike go. Obviously, you don't want to do that, but you've got more situational awareness because you're standing up more upright, but also you're more maneuverable. You can actually step away. You've got a little bit more control of your total environment. And ultimately, it's faster running one hand with the bike than it is holding the bike with two hands. Again, practice that in a field and see the difference. Yes, you can run along holding the stem, so the top of holding your stem. But the problem with that is a lot of people, we have drink bottles and things like that, so it's hard to get at. So again, the seat is probably the best place to hold when you're running with your bike to get to the mountain line. And when I say running, it's kind of a jog, it's an Ironman, it's a long day, you won't be sprinting. But ultimately, every little trick like this is about not leeching time. And while you're not going fast compared to, say, for example, an Olympic distance race, you can still jog along as opposed to walking, and it's saving you time. And that's what it's all about. It's all those little things that will save you time going forward, that help by the end of the day. Okay, so practice that and we do it with a tri club and where we run figures of 8 holding bikes, getting used to leaning the bike one way, leaning the bike the other way, and just be comfortable being able to do that, so that you don't turn up at a race and you're kind of, well, what do I do here? And it's one of those things, it's a skill-based session that is worth doing. You don't have to do it a lot. You might not even do it much until the last couple of weeks before the race and just get used to it. You know what I mean? So the other consideration is how you're going to mount your bike. And there's a couple of factors on that. One will depend on whether you're going to have your cycling shoes on the bike or whether you're going to put your cycling shoes in transition. If you put your cycling shoes in transitions, a couple of things. You can control what, you're not going to get grit and grime on your feet. You need to be mindful of where transition is. So if there's dirt or grass or anything like that, you do run the risk of clogging up your cleats, which means that when you get to mount your bike, you won't be able to clip in. The other thing to consider also is that when you're running with your bike, cycling shoes the sole of a cycling shoe is made out of some of the slippery surface to man. So the risk of falling is a little bit higher. You just have to go a bit slower, and that's the thing, you can't run as fast. The other thing is that when you go to mount your bike, you have to stop, clip one foot in, give it a push, swing your leg over, and away you go. If you are that athlete that is doing that, please, when you get to the mount line, go to the side rather than doing it smack bang in the middle, because you'll have guys like me who are coming up and going to go a little bit faster, who are probably going to do a sort of a half step, half leap onto the bike, and it's a little bit more fluid, and we're not expecting you to stop. So if you are the athlete that is going to stop, just be considerate of other people, but also you don't want to suddenly stop and have somebody run into the back of you and hurt your leg or something like that, you know what I mean? Spear you with the aero bars, So that's one way to do it. The other way is to leave your shoes on the bike, and basically, now there's a term we have, it's called the leap of faith, which is basically when you come to the mountain line, you run along holding the seat, then you put your hand on the handlebars, put the other one up, and you just swing your leg over it and you leap up onto the seat, and away you go. Put your feet on the shoes, get up to speed, and you're away. Now, Ironman's a cool thing. There's one thing to think about in context of an Ironman. And that is, if you watch the ITU guys, their seats like that, and they just come running up and they jump up on there and they're away. Often with Ironman, and this is a little trick if you are practicing it, often with Ironman, another prop, is you have a bottle cage in behind here. Okay? So you might kind of work out where I'm going with this. Depending on what kind of bottle cage and how high it sticks up. If you suddenly, for example, if you practice without a bottle in your bottle cage, you come to the race and you're running to the mountain line and you're half into your leap and you suddenly realize, not only have I got to clear the seat, I've now got to clear an extra 2 to 3 inches of bottle. And a bottle on the inside of your thigh is probably not the best thing. So just something to consider when you're practicing that and when you're practicing running with your bike and practicing all this stuff, sometimes you need to practice is how the bike would be set up in full race trim, okay? So it's just a consideration. So sometimes what you're better doing is, as you come out to the mountain line, put your foot on one of your shoes and then scoot your bike a couple of times to get up to speed, and then you can swing your leg over, put it on the other shoe, get up to speed and put your feet in, and away you go. So it's just something that's it's a catch for young players. Hey? It's like, because the other thing is, if you do, you run the risk of hurting your leg, but you also run the risk of breaking your bottle cage, and especially if that's your nutrition. So I'll put that away now. So it's just something, so you need to practice how you're going to mount your bike, and that is whether you're going to have your shoes on the bike or whether you're going to have your shoes on your feet. I personally go shoes on the bike, and then there are ways that you can tie the heels of the shoes to the frame with elastic cords, with elastic bands, so that they'll hold the shoes level, and then you can just come up, put your foot on it, take a stroke, swing your leg over, put your other foot on, and then as you ride away, the elastic bands will snap. If they don't, you can just undo your shoe out the cleat and flick your leg out. It'll snap the band and away you go. I tend not to worry about them. I just tend to come up and I kind of pause, put my foot on the top of the shoes, because the shoes hang like that. I kind of just put my foot so the shoe slips up, and then give 2 little scoots, and then I'm away. And it's reasonably fluid. If I was doing an Olympic distance race, it's a bit different. But again, Ironman, my bottle sits up over the seat. So you just have to be a little bit more circumspect. So there's 3 things to think about. What you're going to wear, practice running with your bike, and also how you're going to mount your bike. And that's enough from this episode. I'll be back soon because I'm running out of time. Peace out. See you later. Bye-bye.